look at some that involved the other factoring that we did before, where we had the slip and slide method. So let's take a look at this first one. Remember, our goal, it had to be equal to 0 first. And then we were trying to find a way to factor. So we have to check, first step of factoring is always greatest common factor. Do we have one here?
Oh, 3.
3. So if we take out the 3, we'll do this with x squared plus 3x minus 4. Okay. So then if we, since it's a 1x squared, we can do the shortcut where we're setting up 2 parentheses. We need 2 numbers that multiply to a negative 4 and add to a positive 3. Positive 4, negative 1. So that's x plus 4 and x minus 1. At this point, we have to set everything equal to 0. So you can make equations, you can draw, and kind of separate it. It's like all these things are multiplied. So we have to set each of them equal to 0. Does 3 ever equal 0? No. So we just ignore that one. Okay, what makes x plus 4 equal 0? So it's just like solving an equation, we subtract over the 4. And we get negative 4. Alright, if we set x minus 1 equal to 0, add the 1, and we get x equals positive 1.
This is hurting my brain.
Do you have a question? Or where did I lose you?
That part?
Setting them equal to 0? Okay.
Like how is 3 not, but like 4?
Okay, but because it doesn't have a variable with it. Does the number 3 equal the number 0? So it was just a plain number, so it's not 0, so we just ignore it. But these have x's, so we're just solving for x. We're getting the x by itself. So it's just basically you take each of these things, we're setting each thing that was multiplied equal to 0 and seeing if we can solve it. Okay, since that does not have a variable, we just ignore it. The 2 with the variable can work. And then we write our final answer with the solution set. So we have the negative 4 and the positive 1. Look at another. So what can we do first? An example. Okay, so you can factor out your 5. We have a very common factor. So 5x squared divided by 5 is just x squared. 20x divided by 5 is 4x. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So now we're just factoring. So we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 4. So the 5 out in front just stays. We have an x plus 2. We have an x minus 6. So at this point, we have 3 different things multiplied. The only way to get 0 when you multiply is if one of the numbers is 0. So we just have to set each of those equal to 0. Can 5 ever equal 0? No, the number 5 is not the number 0, so we don't use that. This one, x plus 2 equals 0. We can solve for the x if we subtract the 2. So we get x equals negative 2. If we set the x minus 6 equal to 0. So if we add the 6th over, we get a positive 6. So our final answers are negative 2 and positive 6. And there's different ways to check these. We know that on a graph, those are the things that are your x-intercepts. So you could look at a graph and see, are you hitting the x-axis at negative 2 and positive 6? You could look at the table feature. These are the numbers that make the whole equation equal 0. So you could see from your table, at negative 2 is your y 0. At positive 6 is your y 0. Let's look at example 3. All right, first step to factoring is to check for a greatest common factor. Do we have one here? No. So if we don't have a greatest common factor, this is kind of going back to the old stuff when we were factoring. Because there was a number here, we had to slip and slide. You guys remember talking about that? So remember we slip the 2 all the way to the end. So then it's x squared plus 3x minus 10. Okay, now it should factor nicely. So I need two numbers that multiply to a negative 10 and add to a positive 3. Mm-hmm. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. 5 plus negative 2 is positive 3. So we have x plus 5. X minus 2. What do we have to do next? We start out multiplying that 2, so we have to divide it. So 5 over 2 doesn't reduce, so it slides back into the front, so that's 2x plus 5. This one, 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, so we have two things multiplied that equal 0. What do we do now? We just, the only way to get 0 by multiplying is if one of these is 0. So 2x plus 5 could equal 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. And these are just equations. We're solving for x. So on this one, what would we do first? Subtract our 5. So we get 2x equals negative 5. Divide by 2. And we get negative 5 halves. It's okay to get fractions. This one we would add our 1. We get x equals 1. So the answers are negative 5 halves and positive 1. Questions on that one? So we have to use all of our factoring from before, but once it's factored, we just set them equal to 0. Let's jump down. Let's go to number 3 here. So first, we always check for what? Greatest common factor. And there is not one. So next we would so we have x squared plus 13x minus 30. So two things, multiply to a negative 30 and add to a positive 13. Positive 15 times negative 2 is negative 30. 15 plus negative 2 is negative 13. Bless you. then what? Divide our 3. So 15 over 3 reduces to 5. 2 over 3 doesn't reduce, so we slide the 3 back in front of the x. So this is our goal. Have it factored and equal to 0. At this point, we just set each parenthesis equal to 0. So we can subtract 5. 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Over here you would have to add your 2. And to get x by itself, we still have to divide by 3. So that's 2/3. And we put them in the solution here, so negative 5 and positive 2/3. You can check these by looking at a graph. You can plug them back into the original. These are the things that make it equal 0. You guys understand what we're doing here? Let's try one on our own so I can kind of walk around and see if we're having problems. Let's just go with number 5. No. So we go straight to slip and slide. Okay, multiply to a negative 14 and add to positive 13. So we know we need a positive and a negative. The bigger one has to be positive. What numbers work? We started out multiplying by 2, so we divide the 2 back. So 1 over 2 doesn't reduce, so the 2 slides in front. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And then to finish, we set each of these parentheses equal to 0. Add our 1. 2x equals 1. Divided by 2, so we get a positive 1/2. And negative 7. No, it does not matter which one's first. And that's part of why we write them in the solution set. It's not necessarily a big deal to not have the solution set, but it's just standard notation. Okay, I want to go to number 9. What is wrong with this one? Right. So we had something like this on Friday. If it's not equal to 0, first you have to bring that negative 2 over. So we have to add 2. It's not like terms with anything that I have, so I just keep a plus 2 on the end. Then we are looking to see if we have any greatest common factors. So is there anything that can come out from all of these? No. If there's not, then what do we do? Flip and slide. So we need to bring the 3 down. So x squared plus 7x plus 6. 2 numbers, multiply to a positive 6, add to a positive 7. Mm-hmm. 6 times 1 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7. we start out multiplying by the 3, so now we divide by the 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Okay, the x plus 1/3, so if we bring the 3 back in front, we have 3x plus 1. Last step. What do we have to do?
Write the equation
Mhm.
equals 0.
Each of them equal to 0. So then we can subtract our 2. We get x equal -2. Subtract the 1. Divide by 3. Okay. We get a -1/3. And what are some ways you could check to see if those numbers were right? Yep, on the graph, they should be the points where your graph hits the x-axis. If you plug them back in on the table, what's your y equal to? 0. So a couple options for checking. All right. Any questions on those?